Hey, welcome to Tough Guys TV. David here. Today, something cool. We are going to be unboxing and setting up a 12-inch dual bevel sliding miter saw by Ridgid. Put a picture up here so you guys can see which one it is before I show you the box. Basically, with this episode, I just want to unbox it, set it up, do some cuts, show you guys what we think about it initially, and then also show you the saw that we've been using forever. You've probably seen it in some of our videos, this old Delta saw. We love it. It's going to be kind of sad actually to take it down. So we're going to get everything set up. Let's get right into it. Woo! Here is the saw. The box is gigantic. I don't know if you can tell how big it is from this. It is huge. They had 2 of them left. I was at Home Depot picking up some lumber and I saw it up on the very top of one of their clearance racks, up really high, and they had 2. I don't know what they were originally, but they were marked down like a whole ton. And by the time I got home, I thought about it more, and then I called back up there and one of them was already gone. So they were nice enough to hold this one for me. I ran up there and picked it up and brought it home. So let's get started unboxing it. But one last thing before we do, here is the old Delta. We've had this thing for a long time. I'm gonna switch this blade back out. It's a 10-inch blade, which actually works in our table saw. So I'm gonna save this blade here and put the old one back on, just the old rough blade. I think we're gonna try to sell it. I really have no reason to keep it, but this is my first saw and it's kind of sad to see it go, but it's gonna be nice getting this one set up. First impressions, it has a dust bag. So, hey Ridgid, if you actually watch this video, this would be a great thing to include with your table saw, but you don't. So think that through. There's one 12-inch blade, 12-inch blade. It's probably okay. The factory blade that came in the table saw was pretty good right off the bat. So we'll take a look at this closer once we get everything set up. This looks like the little clamp to keep down the boards that you have on there, which I thought was a pretty cool feature. We don't have anything like this now. A couple of metal parts, not really sure yet. We'll set these aside. Ooh. Wow, this thing's humongous. That is a giant block of styrofoam. So once I pulled this base part out, it's still stuck down in the styrofoam. I'm gonna break this part free, get it lifted out, and we'll get it set in place over here and see how it fits. Well, that came out of there about as easy as, I don't know, that wasn't easy at all. It was horrible. Thing is super heavy. Lots of styrofoam holding it in place. Probably would have been the best bet to have some help. Anyways, let's try to get it set up. Okay, so initially it looks like this piece is just kind of loosened up. I did take a piece of styrofoam out and that strap, which I think is what released this, which is probably what made my life a little bit harder than it needed to be. So this actually is pivoting up right now. So I need to figure out how to get everything locked in place, and I need to cut this other strip off, which actually loops around this leg down there, as you can see. So before I can really get it set up, I'm gonna try to cut that and then get this stood up, locked in place, and then straighten the entire thing up. Okay, now that I've got it just briefly lined up straight, which I'll need to check with a square before I'm ever cutting, but I just wanted to get it turned so that I could kind of see if this stand is gonna work. And I think for right now, this is gonna work. We may end up building a much better station. It has enough room and clearance in the back. So this is the little locking pin here that keeps the front locked down like this. So if I release this guy, put a little bit of pressure down and then pull that out, and then you'll see this can now raise, and now it moves in and out. Other than that, you've got a couple of locks here that hold in the miter fences, and then these levers in the back control your tilt, you know, from this way to this way. I'm no expert. I don't know what that's called. It's probably some fancy term for it. You've got handles to actually pick this thing up and move it. This is your depth control for the, you know, how far the blade goes down. So overall, the build quality feels amazing so far. I'm really happy with it. I'm gonna review the instructions here really quick to see about putting these miter fences on and what it recommends for me to do next as far as getting it set up. Take a look inside the instructions. They do a good job here of just kind of getting you familiar. I've never had a saw that's this detailed, that has this many functions, so I'm definitely gonna spend some time reading about all the extra stuff that I don't have. I mean, it even has LED lighting inside of it somewhere. You know, my saw did not have that before. And then it's got some baseline instructions on features, different things that it can do. And then it does actually go into like a full-on assembly and tells you some of the tools that you would need to do that. So I'm gonna take a quick look at this and then look at the steps for assembly so we can actually put this together. And since we just mentioned that depth control, so what that does is that basically controls, if I close this down, that hits into the saw right there, you can see, and that's where the blade would be going down into that little groove. So say I wanted to just make a more shallow cut, you can actually pull this little thing forward, and then this little bolt will run into that. So watch when I push down now, and it hits that piece. Then you can adjust the depth of that just by twisting it up and down or set it in place. So that's a pretty cool feature that I did not have before that I think might actually come in handy quite a bit for us. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get these corners of this thing screwed down, and I'm just using some deckmate screws, and I'm putting a little washer on there. I don't know if this will focus so you guys can see, just a little star tip. I'm gonna put these 4 screws in the perimeter to basically hold this in place as I'm working on it. For the next part, we want to install these miter fences. So this is the piece, and you can see the groove here in front of me. Now it came with these kind of sticking into the spot. So we're gonna get those loose. This second piece here, I did have to use a Phillips head screwdriver. Shh, it's a Milwaukee screwdriver for the Ridgid saw. So we're gonna get this set in place. And it looks like that just sits in place. And I guess you can slide that however you may need. And then you can lock it in place. So this kind of slides, move this out of the way here. So this slides wherever you may wanna set it up. So I'm gonna set it up a little bit square with the saw for now, and then we can get it moved later on. And from the back side, you can see there's this piece here to tighten it down, and then this guy here gets screwed in place. Like so, and that is super sturdy. Feels good, it's not moving anywhere. I'm gonna go ahead and put the other side on now. The next part it says is for the dust bag. Like I said, I gave him a little bit of a gut punch there at the beginning because I felt like the table saw should have come with a bag. It showed one on the box, it didn't come in the box. I'm not really sure why, but basically this is just going to sit onto here. I'm gonna take a quick look to make sure I've got the angle right, but that just presses on there. The only thing I want to be sure of is that I'm keeping it out of the way of everything else. So that's one thing I gotta kind of check on is the orientation, because I don't want the bag to interfere with the saw when it's sliding. So I'll kind of bring this around to show it. So as you move it, you kind of see the shape of the bag. It's got like a rigid piece inside of it. Rigid piece. Anyways, it moves. You can see if you twist it the wrong way, it's basically running into your saw components. So I want to make sure it's twisted out like that. Kind of show it from the other side. And you can see there it's completely out of the way of what we need. And the instructions don't really show you the orientation too terribly well. It just kind of shows you where it sticks on there. So I'm just gonna kind of trial and error that guy. But hey, at least we have a dust bag. All right, we're ready to try and get the blade installed. I did move the location of the saw. We had it over here before, and because it's got the sliding back part, it just kept hitting this staircase. So we've got a little loft in our shop up above. So I moved it around over here. I do have a fan going because it's already getting hot, so apologize for the extra noise. The next step is to get the blade installed, so we're gonna go through that process now. All right, in the instructions, it mentions that you use a blade wrench, which is like a Phillips screwdriver on the end of an Allen wrench. My package didn't come with it. I checked in the box like 3 or 4 times over. I have one of these that's the exact size we need, but just to show you what that is, if it's mentioning blade wrench, maybe yours will come with it. Maybe I missed it, but I did not see one in the box. So the first step is to loosen up this screw, which will allow this plate to move up out of the way. This whole thing will slide back so we can access that bolt which will allow us to install the blade onto the saw. I don't want to take it all the way out just because you don't need to. See, once you get it loose enough, it'll just free up, and this piece holds back in place so that you have this free to go. Now, if you were to take the wrench and just go in here, you're going to notice it just moves freely. So what they've done is they've added a little push pin that locks this in place so that you can actually loosen it. It's actually right here on the back side. So you would push this in while you're spinning, and it actually locks. See if I can show you guys both sides simultaneously here. So now let's see, it's moving, and if I click on this, it pushes in, and now it's locked. So that's the way you do that. So when you see me having this thing locked and I'm loosening it from the other view, I'm pushing this pin down on the opposite side there, so it's engaged. There's the bolt, comes out. See that? And 1/2 of this washer assembly, it's gonna come off this way. And here is the blade that comes in the box. That's the one we're gonna install here first. Just so we can test out the saw with the blade that came with it. So here's the blade, it tells you your rotation direction. We're just gonna put it in this way. So I'm gonna take these little guards off and then we'll get it installed. All right, we've got the blade guards off. So we're gonna slide this into place. Blade sits on there nicely. Here you can see. I'm gonna start with this washer back on. Everything goes together real smooth. And then the bolt. The bolt is reverse threaded. So notice I'm lefty-loosey, I'm turning it to the left to put it in. Now once I get it hand tight, I'm gonna have to reach around the backside here and push that pin in again in order to tighten it all the way down using that Allen wrench. And once that's tight, it's good to go. Now we'll set this back in place. Let the guard come back down. And now it'll be good to test it out. So see, the guard covers it completely and does have some air to let air in there, but it does cover it completely on both sides. So that's what you should be looking at once this is done. Also, quick PSA. This is not plugged in. I have everything unplugged while you're doing this. You know, even if you don't think you can accidentally hit this button, you know, just keep it unplugged while you're changing out or putting on the blade for the first time. But one more quick feature, it does include this little clamp piece, and I wanted to show where it goes. They actually have spots on both sides. So once you have this thing set like you want, it just kind of sits down in that little hole on the back side of that miter fence. And then this can move, you know, out of your way when you're not needing it, or when you need it, you can pull it in place and then tighten it down. There is a spot on the opposite side as well here. So if you needed to have it on this side, like the way your garage is set up, you have to run your longboards out the other way, then that would work for you as well. So that's a really cool feature. Super easy and smooth and can be used, you know, quickly. Before we get cutting, I wanted to talk a little bit about how this turns and moves. So it can be a little bit confusing, at least it was for me, never having used one of these before. And I just wanted to show, like, you know, adjusting this miter lock, like how this thing slides around. It's a little different than what I was used to, at least based on the saws I had before. So on this lever here, you've got two parts where this piece comes up and then this piece can be depressed. And from what I figured out, when you're depressing, when you click that button, now you can slide it. You kind of hear it clicking along as it goes. You can move this about. And then once you are ready to release it back, like say I wanted to lock it into one of these preset locations, which I believe they've got those set on a few different, you know, main spots, like 0 degrees, 15, 22.5, 45, 60, etc. I would press this button down again, and you hear it click, and then as I move it, it'll lock in. You see there it moved and it locked in at 15 degrees. So this was a little bit confusing for me because instinctively I just wanted to lift this up and slide it, and then it would just click in place. Basically, releasing this allows you to slide it. So when you release this, it lets you move it. Click in, now it's free again. Now I can move it. When I'm ready to get close to 0 there, I can tap it, click, now it's locked in at 0. And when I want to really lock it in, press that down, and then it's ready to go. The next thing I want to do is I want to see if this is actually squared up. I have adjusted the miter in the back to be as close to 0 as I could visually, but I need to find out if it actually is square, so I'm going to use just a big metal square for that. So as far as I know, I don't see any way to lock this up. It wants to always fall forward, so I'm going to use that wrench. I'm going to stick it in there to keep that thing out of my way. I wanted to do a quick overview of how this actually works back here. So hold on to the lever. There's a lever up above my hand that allows you to control the saw, or hold the blade up at the top. This is in locked position, so when I tilt this up to here, when I lift this little lever, I can slide the saw. It slides freely, you can see here. Now the cool thing is, if I get off of 0 and I click that back down, it can still move until it hits one of the pre-made stopping points in the saw. So again, it's still an unlock because this is up. Now I can move it left to right. Let's say I wanted to go all the way down to 45, release the bypass, and then let it rest in place. Remember, it's still unlocked though, so you'd want to lock it all the way down. If you're leaving it like this, lift it back up. Let's get it near 0, down, it's locked. I'm shaking it back and forth, and then push that back, and it's fully locked in place now. Now, in case you're not perfectly squared up on this, there are some options for this. So this guy, this plate actually comes off the front, and there are some screws here on the back that allow you to do some really fine adjusting to that miter system. And in the instructions, they actually go through this in great detail. If you are really having a hard time getting it squared up, they show you how to take apart that assembly, and there's some micro adjustments that can be made to that. That's not something I'm going to go through on this video, so my apologies if you were looking for those kind of details. I'm more of just getting it set up. It is square as far as what we need, and we're going to get it tested as far as just making some cuts and a basic overview. If I do run into trouble with this thing not being square, or it's got wobble, or there's something going on with it over time, then that's something I will definitely explore for you guys and do kind of like a follow-up video. And quick disclaimer, I found that saw wrench thing, the little Allen wrench. I did find it. Let me show you where it was. So I don't think the instructions told me where it was, but as I was goofing with this thing, it's right there. So it's up inside the handle. And there it is. So sorry about that. Here it is right there. All right, for our first test, I've got a kind of a mix of different types of boards. I've got a 10-inch piece of plywood. We've got a 1x6 treated like deck board. That's a 1x12 piece. This is a 1x8, and then a 2x6. Just some random boards I found, so we can kind of see how it works with each different type, as well as different types of wood. Like this is painted, so we can see how it does the cuts there with that factory blade. I think it'll be a pretty good test. Let's try them out. Cuts nice and clean. One initial thought is that this blows an insane amount of dust. Let's see if I can get this free. I'll show you guys a little bit closer. It's an insane amount of dust considering that it has a dust bag. But like, look how much dust just came out and got on the saw. Like from one cut, literally just one cut. So I'm gonna look at the instructions and make sure I don't need to loosen something in order to get that. I mean, it looks like it's going in there. Maybe it just has to run a few times, but obviously if I'm sliding this back and forth now, all of this stuff's gonna get stuck up inside of there. I'm not actually sure. Let's pull this out and see what happens. Loosen that. So I guess it does a good job of knocking off the sawdust, but man, I just figured that there would be some amount of protection from that, but I guess not. So let's see how dirty it gets. I mean, that's one cut, so let's see if I cut like all these and we'll see how bad it is after that, I guess. Cut's pretty clean. That's a 2x6. Nice clean cut. Yeah, it's pretty nice. I feel like it cuts pretty clean through there. Just as far as making that cut there, I made all the initial cuts. I made the cuts of that piece of cedar, and this is basically what it's thrown out. So you see behind it, all this sawdust here. To be honest, I'm pretty disappointed in that. You know, it's got a bag. You would think they would engineer this to where it's maybe sucking some air into it or something. I mean, I kind of don't really even understand why there's a bag at all. I mean, look at how much sawdust came out of it. And I mean, there's a tiny bit in here. You know what, we'll just take this off and we'll open this up and see how much is actually in there. But I mean, just look at that. Like, why have a bag and there be this much? So I can see that having a vacuum attachment to this, which they were kind enough to make this like a standard shop vac attachment, is gonna be basically necessary for us, which we've never had to do in the past. I mean, even my old 10-inch Delta, we had a Tom's shoe bag for proof on that one, and this thing caught more dust in it than this did. So it's kind of food for thought. You're making your decision on maybe buying one of these saws. Okay, so let's open up this bag really fast and see what we caught, considering all the sawdust that was out. So I'll unzip it. And it looks like, I mean, it caught something. It caught a really good amount. So maybe I'm just being a complainer, but I really feel like you've got a bag system built into your saw. I mean, why not have it actually suck the dust out? I've rigged up the vacuum hose that doesn't technically fit to it. So we're gonna test this out. This piece fits a lot tighter than the generic piece on the end, so I'm just gonna turn the vacuum on and I'm gonna run the saw. And no, I'm not gonna cut the bag, but maybe I should. I'm gonna cut some more wood and we'll see if it's any better. That is 0% better, 0, and maybe that's because that's not designed for it. I want to try to move the camera to show you guys where that dust is going, because I really feel like all the dust shoots right here. It doesn't even shoot where this thing is. I mean, it only goes down this far, and all the dust looks like it's shooting right out underneath it. So I'm gonna see if I can get that on camera and making a cut. Zoomed in a little bit. I'm gonna be looking right here and see if we can see where it's coming from. All right, let's test it out, see if we have any wobble. Ridgid's phone support. They have good music. All right, so I'm finally back at the shop. I had the call with Ridgid. I didn't have the customer service rep on the phone because I just felt like that wasn't really fair to be recording somebody who has no idea what's going on. They basically told me that they had no idea about the blade wobble issue, or he hadn't personally heard of it. Fair enough. He said that I'd have to take the saw to a service center in order to get the blade wobble thing figured out and assessed. But they also couldn't tell me for sure that my extended warranty, or not my extended warranty, but my 90-day return period with Home Depot would be honored if they try to repair it and then it still doesn't work. And that's my biggest concern is, so I wait, 4 or 5 weeks, however long it takes, and then the saw still doesn't work. Well, then what do I do at that point? Can I return it? And it's just not something I'm gonna risk. I think I'm gonna return the saw. All right, so I'm at Home Depot now. I'm gonna try to switch out the saw. They've got some way up here on a shelf that had the newer serial number, so we're gonna try that out. All right, I'm gonna manually move this new blade really slow, and I'm just gonna see if a gap appears at all on this board. And at least initially, nothing is showing that. Now, I didn't test this with the other saw, but I'm not seeing it get any further away as it spins, which I really like that. So, and there's nothing clamped this down. I just kind of pressed it up against to see if it would move as it goes. And then I also just put like a speed square on there. And I mean, I think that's about as close as you're gonna get. Again, I'm not for sure, but at least out of the box with this new blade on there, it looks okay. Let's test it out and do a couple cuts. All right, here it is, and see if we can pick up the shaking and vibration. You can even hear it when it amps up. Listen. All right, guys. So this is a little different of an outro. This saw is a complete piece of crap. The fact that I got one, spoke to support, figured out the whole get a new serial number, get a newer saw, and then I did that. Spent 2 hours at Home Depot getting it switched out so they could, wait for them to get it off of the forklift because it was up high. All so that I can bring it all the way back to my house, 30 minutes away, set it up again, and have this one be worse, and actually the entire saw vibrates, is just super disappointing and awful. So the Ridgid rep said he didn't understand. He didn't know, right? So hey, that's cool. Maybe he didn't, but in their system they surely know that these saws are flawed and that they shouldn't be selling them. They shouldn't be selling them anywhere, and they certainly should tell Home Depot to pull them off the shelves if they're this bad. I'm one of a handful of people on Instagram that reached out to me as soon as I posted my first video on there, like the little snippets from this long form video, and that's what clued me into the whole process. And like I said, I'm just super disappointed in the whole thing. I really have, I love Ridgid. I've got like everything they make. The warranty's awesome, but there's going to be a DeWalt saw here soon, and that's what I'm going to be using, and that really sucks. To love a brand and then have them just kind of not come through for you. So there's obviously a flaw with this saw. At your own risk, you know, if you decide to buy one, great. I've heard the 10-inch one is actually really good, but I need a 12-inch saw. So anyways, I really appreciate you guys watching, and I hope that this video saved you some pain and suffering and some time, and maybe there's a fix by the time you're seeing this video. Maybe this saw has been fixed, and if so, send me a comment, send me a message, send me an email, let me know that it's fixed, because you know what, I'd love to try it again once they get it figured out. But right now, it very apparently does not work like it should. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you love what we do, please consider subscribing to the channel. It does help us out. We do a vast array of DIY stuff, so not every video might be right up your alley, but hey, if you like what we do, give us a subscribe. And at Tough Guys TV on basically all social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We've even got on TikTok now. If you're into that thing, check it out. Anyways, thanks for watching. See you guys in the next project, and hopefully it's better than this one.